Chair Jaffa, we are streaming to YouTube. We are ready when you are.
Okay, thank you. Ask the audience to silence their phones. Anybody here? And rise for the call this meeting to order for the February 18th PACAB meeting, and rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. All right, thank you. Will the clerk call the roll?
Roll call for today's meeting. Draper? Here. Atwood?
Here.
Groom is excused. Scudder?
Here.
Regis is excused. And Chair Jaffa?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Good, thank you all. All right, so we'll open the floor for citizen comments on any subject. We have up to 3 minutes per speaker. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to speak at this time?
I have a question.
No one is signed in.
Say it again, nobody signed in, sorry.
Is this like a council meeting where you have an opportunity at the end?
Good question, I can't remember.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
It's on the agenda, sorry. My apologies.
Pile all my
Okay. So we have the approval of the agenda and consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve.
And a second. And will the clerk read the agenda, the approval of the agenda, the statement there, whatever that's supposed to be.
Okay. Voting on the approval of today's agenda and consent agenda. Scudder?
Yes.
Atwood?
Yes.
Draper?
Yes.
And Chair Jaffa?
Yes.
Your agenda and consent agenda have been approved, and on the consent agenda were the January 21st, 2026 PACAB meeting minutes.
Okay. And for the audience, or anyone, those are generally available on the city website after they're approved, of course. Okay. Special orders, presentations and reports, proclamations and awards. We have a recognition of service for Ben Smith. Do we have something to read?
As the award.
Okay.
Ben, if you want to come up here, the City of Seward, the Mayor and the City Council, as well as the City of Seward, would like to present you with this plaque, as well as our City of Seward Challenge coin.
Wow.
Thank you very much for your service.
And not to extend that too much, but Ben served on PACAB and brought a certain level of expertise that many of us don't have as a trained professional engineer with a strong understanding of infrastructure and things. And his opinions and counsel were always appreciated. He's now moved out into the Moose Pass area. Thank you, Ben. Okay, city manager's report.
Yeah, so the thing I wanted to highlight on the city manager's report is that the deputy harbor master just returned from representing Seward at the Seattle Boat Show, where there were several different ports and harbors that were participating, and we're very excited about what that could bring to Seward. And that's it.
That's it?
Yep,
Okay.
that's my big highlight.
Questions for the manager?
If you have them, I'll pass them along.
Well, for the administration, if you will. Okay. So then we'll move on to the Alaska Railroad report, and Board Member Atwood will put on a different hat.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the report is here in writing, and a couple of things. One, vessel dates have been pushed back a little bit. We have a cargo barge coming in with some Spinard Builder Supply materials, probably about 7,000 tons worth, and I think they're going to get here about the 22nd or so. And then we have the MV Kodiak Island coming to bring products related to fracking sand. It's mostly industrial salts, but that's been pushed back to March 10. And the rest of the report is I think in good enough shape. And then there's just 2 pages I added, which show some of the design of the new terminal and dock as we're moving forward. And that's all I have.
Okay, are there questions for the railroad?
I have a question,
Yeah.
actually.
Please.
I understand that Christy Terry's going to be here, I think, tomorrow, giving a presentation to the chamber and doing some, giving some more information, but I'm wondering, do you know, Dwayne, if there's any kind of like official opening date or ribbon cutting ceremony or anything like that?
So I would venture to guess we will have some ribbon cutting event where it's going to fall on our timeline and in terms of operations and the day that we open the doors. I can't say right now, but we'll certainly have that information available. And it's my understanding that tomorrow it's going to be sort of a hard hat tour through the terminal building.
Generally, would you, the question, the progress is more or less anticipated. Seward company was pretty ambitious and optimistic, and I think they've met a lot of their target dates. Do you feel that they are generally on target or ahead?
Yeah, generally. The terminal building's coming along fine, and I was just on a tour with some folks from cruise line agencies and our security contractor yesterday, to get a look around the building. And right now, the eastern side of the structure, the roofing's going up for the luggage barn. And it looks good. The dock project itself, the challenge is, of course, demolishing the old dock, and it's moving along, and Turnigan is sort of doubling down, and I believe there's 3 work barges in place, not counting another dredge vessel. So things are moving along.
Well, I can tell you, driving in this morning, Board Member Groom is not here, but it's exciting to me to see all the crane booms in the air. Coming from a construction background, that always means a lot of activity on the ground. So it's good to see that.
I do have one more question, if I
Yeah.
might. With 63 cruise ships, that's quite a bit fewer than we normally see in the summer. Is that correct? Or?
Yeah, so, and then the ships, vary in size and capacity. So there's that as well. We will have, a larger vessel in the schedule this coming season. And, but yes, the numbers are down a little bit. But we had anticipated some repositioning to Whittier, and that's what we've seen.
Do you have any idea the number of passengers we might expect to see this summer?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, last year I think the number we were using was, 150,000, and I have, again, it depends. I will have numbers that we'll be shooting for. I don't have that number off the top of my head right now, but I think it's going to be comparable.
Around 150,
yeah.
that's what you're thinking?
Approximately.
Okay, well, that raises one question for me. You mentioned that they're repositioned to Whittier, and I know early on there was some logistics because of the construction. Is that a temporary relocation, or will those boats possibly be returning to Seward?
Well, that's another good question. In terms of how the market expands, and we are seeing new vessels in this port, coming to this port. So, but whether companies that are now aligned with the Port of Whittier, whether they'll return, that's I would not know. But we continue to, solicit business, and year over year, we're anticipating growth going forward. So.
Could you speak to that just a little bit? That's obviously not done here in Seward. That will be a corporate activity where there's an outreach.
Yeah, so if you actually look at the content that we provided, there's David Greenhall is mentioned in here. He's our Vice President of Marketing and Customer Service, and so and then also Christy Terry, they're our Vice President of Real Estate. They're both involved at that level, soliciting new business, and I'm sure we'll get information again going forward on the potential for new ships and new lines.
And they will be, Christie will be here, but not David tomorrow to speak to the chamber?
I don't know if David Greenhall is coming tomorrow or not, but I believe Christy Terry is, yes.
Okay, great. That's all I had.
I need one more
Yeah.
question, sorry. This barge is coming in for Spinard Building Supply, or I guess was it yesterday. Is that normal? Do they normally barge supplies in through Seward?
So what happens annually is SeaTac Marine brings Spinard Builder Supply materials essentially monthly into the Port of Anchorage. And the Port of Anchorage then has considerable ice in the winter months. So then those barges are diverted to Seward, and the product comes through our port. And so we'll see that for February, we'll see that for March. Last year we actually saw it in April as well. I don't know that we'll get 3 Spinard Builder Supply barges this year. I've had conversations with the company, and I believe we're going to get 2. So.
And in terms of an economic impact on Seward, what do you see, what kind of economic impact do we see from that? Is it just the longshoremen?
Yeah, so yes, clearly the railroad benefits through its charges for the material and for dockage, but yeah, we're putting a lot of longshoremen to work for several days.
That's exciting. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, very good. Thank you. And then we will move to the Chamber of Commerce report.
I'm kind of pushing this. Learned my lesson on pulling the microphone. Hi, Amanda Sweeting, Outside City Limits. Do I say that here? Seward Chamber of Commerce. It's been a pretty busy week. We did submit a report. I hear it didn't make it into the packet, but I have it in front of me, so I could just verbally walk you guys through it. As you guys know, our DMO contract, DMO stands for Destination Marketing Organization. We do all the visitation services and destination marketing for the city of Seward. So we're like the marketing agency for for Seward. It got renewed for a 3-year contract, and it was at a higher funding level, and that's mostly to support staffing needs. With the cruise ship growth, we have to contractually, by city standards, staff the visitor center 7 days a week, and then on cruise ship days, the cruise ship terminal and the Derby booth as well. And we're excited to staff the Derby booth this year. I know Harbor Master Tony gets a lot of tourism questions, and we're excited to field those for him. The visitor's guide, we're sending the first draft for review to the printer on Monday. We're very excited about it. We're going to be able to print 5,000 more with that city contract funding upgrade. We ran out about mid to late July this summer, and so we'll be printing an extra 5,000. We'll be at 45,000 printed, and those go at the airport. They go to other visitor centers across the state. People request them to be mailed to their house, which they do. And so that's pretty exciting that we'll be able to have more, especially with these bigger boats. We've also added a couple things. We're trying to highlight new businesses. We're trying to exchange different photos into it. We've added a shop section to highlight our shopping members, which is really exciting. Some visitor center stuff with the funds as well. Another big asset piece was the visitor center, just with the many years of foot traffic, and then just like this year alone, you've seen an 86% increase in visitor center people coming to ask questions at the visitor center. So obviously that's a lot of wear and tear on that really old building. So there was some funds set aside from the contract. The contract asks that we have a public restroom. The public restroom support beams are failing, and so someone's working on our contract started this week. So those will be repaired, and some siding pieces will be resided, and then the back wall is all molded out, and so all that will be ripped out and replaced. So that's really exciting. That's some stuff that's like foundationally needed to be happen for a while. All the lights in the chamber building and the visitor center will be replaced. I don't know if you've been in there recently, but they're worse than these ones, and they flicker a lot, which means that they're the end of their life, so they're all being replaced. And then the electrical room is not super safe and needs to be brought up to code, and so we also have an electrician on hand who's going to come and do that for us. So nothing super flashy yet this year, but we have some exciting ideas about how the visitor center can tell Seward's story better. Because right now, if you walk in, it's just kind of like informational. It's not really inspiring. And I feel like visitors should come. They should be inspired to care about Seward and care about it as our home and as a year-round community. And so we're hoping next fall we can start on the kind of more fun repairs, and we would love to repaint the building, and the deck is desperately needs to be sanded and repainted, and a lot of the wood is rotted out and needs to be repaired as well. So those are some of the future repairs. Polar bear jump happened. It's old news now, I know, but we had 62 jumpers, 15 teams. As of January 20th, for the American Cancer Society, over $200,000 was raised, which was amazing. We couldn't have done it without the Harbor Masters team, of course. They really helped us out. It was our first year doing it, and so they helped us guide us through like what the jump actually entails. And then some stuff that's coming up. Obviously, we're going to need new signage for the jump area. They have a bunch of old signage with like beer advertisements and stuff, so we'll replace that. We're going to do a new website where we're going to do it in-house. I'm a web designer, so there's no extra needed funds for that. And then we're going to create some new signage for the Derby booth to advertise it more as a visitor center. And then also for when the jump actually happens, we'll have some signage. And that's pretty much what I got. Do I ask a question? Or I guess this is citizen comments.
Can you go back to the increase in visitor center traffic? Did you say there was an 86% increase?
Yeah, from 2025 to 2026.
86%?
What was the percentage?
86%.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, it was. Let me pull it up just to double make sure. But and then the cruise ship schedule for 2026 is on our website. It's live, and it does have passenger numbers on it, so you could go check that out. Emily laid it out a little differently this year, so it's a little bit more digestible than the cruise ship calendars previously.
Good questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Could you go back to the information you provided about your print run for the visitor's guide?
Yeah, sure.
What is the number?
In 2024 we saw 5,000 visitors, and then in 2025 we saw 11,000.
Cool.
So it was quite a difference. Yeah. In July alone, we almost saw 3,000 people at the visitor center. So quite a bit. The print, like the number we print?
Right. I'm just wondering, just the number of just the print run itself.
Yeah, so we're looking at it was 40,000 last year, and then this year will be 45.
Okay.
Yeah, so we're printing 5,000 more.
Yeah, no, I can say that I hand it out regularly, and of course the mapping that's provided. in the shuttle stop locations. It's,
Yeah.
we use it.
It's pretty useful. And,
Yes.
and that's available for businesses to come, just if you email or call the visitor center and email membership@sewer.com and request some boxes. That's for the public to use.
And if I might just follow up on the other question, to what do you attribute the increase in, visits to the center?
Malia answered this question. She's our visitor center coordinator.
Yeah.
I guess there's something about the fact the bus schedule is a little bit different this year and the
Yeah,
train schedule. I think we just saw an uptick in visitors in general. I can't say this was my first summer.
Right, yeah. Because I wouldn't extrapolate and say, oh, we had an 85% increase in visitation.
Right.
So it's something.
That's what, in the visitor center.
Yeah, something happened to get more people to your doorstep, which is great. All right, well, thank you.
Yeah, of course.
I had two questions. I think the first one might follow up on the same issue about the increase. Do you keep a tally on the electric volt, the EV charging station?
It's kind of like we consider it a pass-through, basically.
I don't mean money, but if you've got people stopping at the EV station, they're gonna spend their time coming in and visiting with you.
It's mostly locals who come in and charge the car, and they just kind of sit in their car. There's a couple of Tesla trucks around town, I'm sure you've seen. I don't know, I'm sure it's on the bills, I just haven't.
Okay.
Yeah, we do get a separate bill for that EV charging station alone. And I know it has grown drastically this last year. I know more people are using it.
Well, that's kind of what I was fishing for.
Yeah, like the bills got much bigger, so. But the EV charging station, it just pays for itself, so.
So along with that is the question you may not be able to answer today, although we talked about it at the last meeting as well, and you talked about it at the council meeting recently, and that is the data collection presentation for your economic model.
Right.
Yeah, obviously there's a component of chamber which is strictly membership funded and what other sources you have, but then there is the public budget as well. So a number of people, I have heard from a number of people who would appreciate a better data presentation from the chamber. Is that something that you guys are aware of or that you're going to be working on?
We do a yearly kind of luncheon. It's basically the impact report that I presented to you guys earlier. We don't really present, the only budgeting that is really open for public consumption is what we turn in, the city funds, which was attached to our city contract. There's two or three pages of Excel sheets, so you can exactly see where the money's going. And that's was attached to, I think, 2 city council agendas. So it's definitely out there and open, and anyone who's reached out to me, I've been emailing it to them. But it's not really included in our impact report, but it's definitely out there, and it's we're pretty transparent about that, yeah.
Okay, so the answer is you do collect the data, and it is the kind of data that would be available to the public.
Yeah, do you mean, by data, do you mean the finance aspects?
Yes, correct.
I wasn't sure if you meant visitation data.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, the finances are available, and they're in a couple city council agenda packets, which are available online. But I'm always happy to email those too. I've emailed the contract to a couple people. But yeah, it's not usually something we put in the impact report.
Well, I think a lot of times people do ask questions about some of the stuff that they don't know how to search for it themselves.
Right, totally.
So, but if it's there and, they can be directed towards it, that's really all.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for today? Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it. Yeah.
Always feel free to reach out if you have more questions.
Okay, so we are up to presentations, and I think this is our big topic for today, and we have Deputy City Manager Bickling to lead us through the information that's in our packet. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. All right.
Oh, we have it on the screen.
Yeah, that's a portion kind of what I'm going to go through up there. But in your packet, I did write out kind of a discussion, and one of the reason I wrote it down this way is so that it can be kind of read as a standalone document for people who are maybe not necessarily like here at this meeting, because I know that there's been just a couple of conversations of concerns about people, and then I'll go ahead and address that. But I did want this, just to be a very viewable document outside of this meeting. So I hope it's helpful to the board and the public. So, but in your packet, I'm actually not going to, can you go back in a couple pages on that, Chris?
So Jason, you have a clicker there, and that is the packet on the screen. So it should take you back as far as you want to go.
Nice. It might be easier reading your packet, I'm not sure, but kind of the thing I just want to talk about is, so whenever the city goes into looking at doing like a feasibility study for a future facility, we kind of defer to the plans that affect that facility. It might be the community land plan. In this case, it's the comprehensive plan, and it's also the harbor plan, which you guys review every year. So, and I know that the development of the Uplands area and the harbor master's office is something that's been discussed here. And so, and I know that it's actually been in the harbor plan for a very long time. So, and what, kind of when we go into this, we want to make sure we're looking at the values of within the comprehensive plan as they're going into this, and just some of the values that we're looking at here and doing this is from the comprehensive plan is we want to have a thriving harbor. We want to have a community appearance that looks good. And kind of usually those are like beautification and landscaping. We want to implement aesthetics when designing and maintaining roadways. We want to maintain the small town feel. We want to be a pedestrian-friendly community. We want to prioritize year-round residents over the summertime tourism industry. And it's not to say like the tourism industry is still a very important part of our economy, so it's not to lessen that. So, but just in general, I want to just, because I know that you guys have been kind of given the assignment of having some discussions around particular pieces of this. So, but there are two separate pieces to this discussion, and one of it's like parking, and one of it's kind of the retail sales. So I think it would probably be helpful if you guys look in your packet, and I think it's going to be like the third page of the R&M packet, and it will look like, it looks like this. It's like a parking plan. I'll go ahead and actually can go to right here. So it looks like this, right? It looks like that one right there. It's got the red letters on it for parking assignments. And then the other one that I'm going to be referencing quite a bit is this guy right there. So, I think just for right now, I'll probably leave that one right here. So, but when we go into design parking lots, there are design standards and best practices around them to kind of ensure like driver and pedestrian safety. So these are like certain size parking lots for like what you call like passenger size cars. And we want to have like adequate spacing for turnaround and egress. And if you want to look at a like spaces that are a little bit too smaller and that are non-standard, we can look at Safeway. And how they're really tight, and we get so many reports of cars running into each other or like hit and runs there because those parking spaces are too tight. So there's a reason that we have standards so that cars can maneuver in and out of those safely. So, and those are kind of taken into account. The planners do that. So, and there's and there've been some discussions about the maximum number of parking spaces in the Uplands, and I would kind of equate that to like a building code where we may be able to like cram like 70 people in this room, but the fire marshal will be like, that's actually not a safe number because we can't get everyone out in time. And so we have this example up here, and this is obviously a really busy day in the Uplands area. And so I just kind of wanted to point out a couple of things that we can show that, based on that example I just gave you, of maybe there are not too many vehicles on there just for safety reasons. So if you look at the orange number 1 there, this is the access to S-float. And if you start looking around through there, there's actually no way for an emergency vehicle to get anywhere near that access. There's no pathway for cars. So for instance, if the fire department or like EMS had to respond to there, they would have to be rolling like equipment through a couple of rows of cars, or if they just couldn't even, they'd have to be dragging hoses or something like that else to get through there. So, and there's no actually like handicap reserved parking in that area either. If you look at number 2, that's up there. If we had to get emergency vehicles in there, it's actually like a dead end, and so that we don't have the correct egress to turn a fire truck around in. So for instance, if like we did have emergency there and the fire truck needed to get back out to go somewhere else, they don't have adequate turnaround space there, and you can't. So and there's just some space limitations with responding to that area. And I would say the same thing applies to number 3 down there as well. If there was an incident down there in number 3, there's not, you don't have a lot of access down in that area too, because if you look at where the number 4 is, you see that rectangle right there, that's actually like a vehicle and a trailer parked out. You can see his trailer sticking way out into that area there, but really there's that pinch point at that vehicle. That's the only way for like an emergency vehicle or like a police vehicle to get back down to number 3 if there's some kind of issue there. And so we can kind of see that this is a really good example of like there's a lot of people parked there, and actually just to the left of number 4 too, another thing you can see is those vehicles are kind of stacked really, really closely together. So I think that would just be like one of those places where you could have, that's kind of right to have some kind of like incident if you have someone who's maybe not as skilled as driving a trailer as someone else.
Do you know if any of this was chalked out? Was there, or was this just sort of organic? People just sort of parked beside each other and beside each other and just kept going?
It usually tends to be organic, and I would say like some days it's not bad, but some days, depending on the first couple people that park, it can be it can kind of mess things up a little bit. But with that, and also too, I would say like we're really only dealing with a couple months a year where it's like this, but it is like we really have to pay attention to these busy times, because that's when you need to have things really, really tight. So we do have, and also too, I was talking to Harbor Master Tony, just because he deals with this, but usually on the 4th of July too, like we have to get all this vacated in and out, and so so we are able to manage at least 24 hours or maybe 12 hours with no one parking in there during the busiest time as well. But and we do have a large parking area that's just to the south of this that you can't see. It's an overflow parking area. It's otherwise known as Boulder Field. But if you look at the R&M packet, if you go back to that one with the red letter parking areas, and you kind of look at all this parking area up in here, the Google Earth. And I would say too, like this R&M plan, this is just kind of a preliminary design. So hopefully I can, when I walk through this, I'll be able to relieve some people's concerns and show how that we can actually get more parking out of here that's actually on this plan right now. So, but if you look at the Google Earth, I think I counted correctly, but there's about 218 passenger vehicles in that picture and about 66 truck and trailer or vehicle and trailers parked in there. And so if we look at the proposed, and this also, these numbers right here, there's a little spreadsheet on here on your packet where it shows this little clip right here. But in our proposed design, in kind of that same area, like the comprehensive area, we have the passenger vehicle spots that are preliminary design is 188. So there's a difference of about 20 passenger vehicles. And then between the two, if we look at like truck and trailer, there's a difference of 9. So we're not like drastically like far off, but and that includes some of those oversized RV spots as vehicle spots. But and if you look at, going back to this Harbor Master South Harbor Uplands plan right here, this guy right here with the red markings on it. So there's a couple of ways that we could really easily like increase parking on this. And I know from a comment that I heard, people would like to have access a little bit more to the MNOP floats or have some parking over there. Because right now we just have like this. Actually, I'll just go ahead and move over to that one. Where are we at here? There we go. So if we look to the, basically just to the northeast of the memorial, they did put in some extra green space there, but that would be a way that we could probably get another like 8 to 10 spots in there pretty easily if we kind of redesign that where those two are and brought those in. So if we added parking in there, we could get another 10, so that brings us only kind of to a shortage of 20 of what was currently in that picture. And then, and also to just have more close access to the MNOP floats there. And then in the, one thing I did want to note too is in the southwest corner there where the campground currently like is, we're changing that to parking. And so it would be, and we wanted to kind of expand that. The preliminary design was to have that kind of an expanded park access down in that area, and like possibly like another, like a pavilion or gazebo down that area. But where it says 12 and 12 and kind of the southwest area where that is too, that we could pretty easily put in another like 10 to 20 spots in that area. And so if we did that, we would actually have more vehicle parking in like just passenger vehicle parking in that area. And then too, the thing that we could do too is like I said, it's only about 600 feet. The entrance to Boulder Field is 600 feet to the south of our entrance right here. And we could, if I drive by that every morning at like 5:45 in the summertime. With the exception of 4th of July, it's pretty much like empty. And so we could easily just designate that area to be like an overflow trailer parking spot, so that way we would end up having actually more parking spots designated mostly in that area than what's in that busiest picture. And at the same time too, have much better like egress and emergency vehicle access. And so just based off of just a couple of those like changes, I think that we could be on top of that parking front. And there was I just wanted another thing too is there was a comment that I read somewhere about like, well, about concerns of removing snow. It's actually like if you look in Anchorage, like they remove snow in all kinds of parking lots and with medians and landscaping, and there's not really an issue. And the Harbor Master's office who are the ones who are going to remove the snow around in that area, they've been part of the planning all along, and so they're just fine with managing that. So before we move on to the, and I would say too though, some of the feedback that we've gotten is that it's on the comprehensive plan, but people actually want there to be like more good landscaping. And I think if you look at the Chugachmute Clinic, and see like how that's really nicely landscaped, and it is nice to have like some trees and some planters and just like some grass a little bit here and there. That's something that really does dress that up, and I think helps maintain that small town feel that people said is important to them. Anyway, next I'll go ahead and we'll talk about the retail sites, and the retail sites area that's up there. You can see where the Harbor Master's office is going to go, and just this is great for the Harbor Master because they will be able to like see the harbor from their office, which is a really important thing, and they're really undersized, so we're excited about having that there. And so, but in that harbor plan that's been around for I think at least 20 years, there was a retail site that was kind of planned. It said retail spaces. I think probably the envision was to look at like our other retail spaces, and so we just wanted to make sure that was included, but it was in that plan. Just as in the preliminary conversations, if we were to make that all retail spaces, you know, like just based on square footage, that would be like a revenue for the city of about $100,000 a year, which is not really here nor there to the city, but just as a kind of a thing. But we also received a lot of feedback that they want more like public access and public space in that. And so one of the things that I think is going to be right, and these are, you guys, these are not like, it's not, the harbor master's office is not going to be square like that. It's just, that was just more of a space, trying to show like it's going to be 2-story. But if we look in that lower right-hand corner, one of the concepts that they showed is like kind of in that boardwalk area giving people the ability to like walk down more like into the harbor on the harbor side on the rocks, having close access to the water, having a place to sit and like eat their lunch, but be like down, so you're actually like sitting lower than the harbor, than the Uplands parking lot is. So that was one concept that they were looking at doing at a couple of spots. That I wanted to make sure of that. And then, you know, when we were, a couple of conversations is that when we were talking with R&M, who are engineers, the lease sites that we have that are currently like where the Derby booth is, I think some of the complaints or like some of the things is that everything looks really different. Some people's is maintained better than others, and other people's are not maintained at all. And so there was the kind of the talk of, which this picture was kind of a, you don't want to necessarily look like this, but there was like, wow, this is a really great space where you have, everything kind of looks the same as continuous down there. You also have they have kind of this big open boardwalk space. There's lighting there, it feels really warm. And so I think that, you know, if we're like, well, if we were going to have lease spaces down there, we'd want them to be like having a design standard that they're going to look very good and similar to the harbor master's office, and having that kind of same design continue on down. And kind of the preference would be to like have, kind of the preliminary discussion was that we put that out for RFP to businesses who are interested in having a site there, and they need to propose to council like, hey, this is the business we're going to have. Obviously giving preference to people that would be open like year round, like if someone wanted to have like a coffee shop down in there or something like that. So that was kind of one, I guess, the side of the conversation, just because the original harbor plan said retail sites. The other piece is that we've heard feedback that people maybe want more just like open access to the harbor. And so, for instance, if we look at, just to think about this one differently, is one is also too, we're going to redo the bathrooms so that they match the harbor master's office by going to expand them. Those ones down there, I mean, they're a restroom, but they're a little bit cold. But we want them to kind of fit into that decking and kind of look like it's part of that area. So there's going to be new restrooms. But in thinking of that lease area, you do see where the handicap access is to the left there. We have that big kind of easement access onto the float there. But really, I think for you guys to think about is like, we could have just a big open area. We could put like gazebos on there or pavilions on there and benches and make it just kind of I mean, you could have that be like one end of the spectrum of where you just have this big open area where people can like walk around and enjoy. There could be some lease area, there could be no lease area, it could be all lease area. And so I think, you know, looking at different citizen comments or what we feel like the public wants to see in that thing. And ultimately too, like if we really wanted to go big in the parking, you could probably like, I figured like if we just got rid of that lease area or that big boardwalk nice area too, you could probably fit another 30 parking spots in there. But anyway, I think I have, anyway, I just hope, I hope all that feedback or that information is helpful to you as a commission to be able to have like and I'm sure the public will kind of be able to talk about too, about what they'd like to see in this area. I don't know, do you have any questions for me on this, what I've shown you guys so far?
I have one question. I was just looking at this matrix here that's referring to square footage. How big is that lease area that's depicted here? Do you know?
I thought I wrote it down, but maybe I did not.
And I guess I'm just leading into a question, like, you know.
We had it figured out at some point in time, just because we knew the lease sites up there, and so, but,
I mean, we built a pavilion not too long ago, you know, with a sort of thematic design, and I was just wondering how, you know, how much space do we need for another one, you know?
yeah, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, just something to think
It's like
about.
you could have a partial leased area, you could have benches in some area. It's nice to have covered area, man, if it's sunny out, you don't want to be in the covered area, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of options here that
Yeah,
could be
certainly.
created.
I had a question.
Yeah.
What is that Boulder Field space like used for right now? We obviously aren't playing baseball there.
No, it's used for overflow parking, so I would say overflow campground. If you look on the 4th of July, that's really the only time in that round that weekend is that it gets full. And so other than that, they do have it open for camping in the summertime, but really, like, you may see a few people that are parking on the edges, but it's relatively empty most of the time.
And so people are paying to camp in there on just like a normal June day?
Yeah, because what happens is that's a non-reservable area. And so it's one of the few areas, if someone's just driving into town, they didn't know we needed reservations, they can actually just go and drive in there and reserve it and get a spot right away. And so where most of the other areas on a reservation system. So, but it's big enough to, I mean, but even with that, there's not that really many people that camp there.
So if we were parking trailers with trucks in there, would that be impeding on potential camping spaces, or is?
I mean, technically, like, yes and no, like, only on the 4th of July. But also, too, if we just kind of divvied it up and just put, like, hey, there's camping along this one edge here, which is usually the best place to camp, or along the kind of how it borders kind of the back of the restrooms there and kind of comes along the creek. Those are like the areas, but we could also just have it so you have plenty of room in there for like turnaround trailer parking.
Mr. Clark, the chair would like to suspend the regular order of business so we can have more of an open discussion.
Yeah, so I have quite a few questions, but I'll just try to limit it to parking, because I'm assuming that's kind of the focus of today's discussion. So one of my questions, first of all, is in this parking scenario, is there a time limit? Like, is it day parking, 5-hour maximum, 2-hour, overnight? I mean, what's the idea as far as the time limit for parking in that area?
I think a lot of people right now, it's used for parking for all day. Because I think, like a lot of those, and some people, it's probably shorter, but I think it just gets a lot of day use parking. I know our meters are, I can't remember what right now, because I'm not at that level for the parking kind of things, but I think a lot of people just pay to park for the day and then go in off their tours, or obviously out on their boats, that kind of thing.
But it's not intended for like overnight parking or camping, right?
I think you can. Yeah, I think you can put in for a couple of days there. So I think a lot of times if people will drop off their boats, they'll go out fishing for a couple of days and then come back. So I think it is, yeah, you can totally do that there as well. That's not a
So if a
problem.
motorhome pulled in there and parked and paid for a couple of days, they could just camp there?
Yeah, I don't know if you're technically supposed to camp in the parking lot, but it's not that, like, if your motorhome is parked there, I don't think anyone's going to come knocking on your door in the middle of the night, as long as you're not being discreet about it. So.
Okay.
So.
I have a couple more questions about parking. So in the past, I've sometimes seen like a vendor up there. Some years there is, some years there isn't. Is a vendor space incorporated in this design, or is that kind of eliminated from this
No,
design?
we didn't really include that in the design, and the clerk can probably tell you about this too, but we have not had a lot of people that are interested in vending the last so many years on city property any longer. So I think there's some really good spots in town that are on private property that kind of tend to gravitate towards that, where they get a lot of business.
Okay.
So, but not that you couldn't incorporate something like that into this design here.
Okay. And then my last question about parking. This doesn't necessarily have a direct effect on the uplands that we're talking about, but what about bus parking? Is there any discussion about trying to improve the bus parking in the harbor, or the way the buses pull in front of the harbor master's office and block all that traffic? Has that been any discussion at all?
Yeah, that has obviously been like an issue for a long time, and it's a very tight spot. One of the things that we're talking about doing is actually moving the shuttle bus stop north, so it's more like across from like the fish house. kind of in that first area there, so it's just along the road. We basically lose like a parking spot. That's the parallel parking spot just past the south entrance of the center lot, and move that bus stop there and kind of expand that, lose a couple parking spots just to get that traffic kind of decongested.
Is there no way to maybe move it to more of an out of the way so you're not blocking all that traffic in the harbor? Because that's such a horrible place to try to drive through in the summertime. I know we all have been through
And
this.
I'm surprised that someone has not got hit by a car, because like, I've almost been hit before, like just walking across with those buses there, and I know we've had some bus touches. And I do think once the harbor master's office is relocated, I think there'll be a lot of discussion about what we're gonna do with that building, and are there ways that we could kind of do something different with some of those pieces in there. We know we still need restrooms in that area, so maybe those are expanded, but also too, like if that's not needed for like the harbor masters per se, is there a way that we could rethink that area? And I definitely think that's been part of the conversation. We'll have to look at that once the new harbor master's office is there, but I would say it's definitely on our radar. Yeah.
What are those buses? What are those buses?
They're the tour buses that drop off passengers that are going out on tour, that are going out like on
On the harbor?
usually six packs, tours, like, Major Marine KFT, like the tour buses will pull up, they stage, kind of in that lot, that's just that little like loop out lot, that's just in the north of Boulder Field.
Where are they coming from? Are this Princess Lodge kind of people, or?
I think a lot of them are tour buses, I just think they're part of like package things, I think they come from lots of different spaces.
Yeah, there's a variety, and some of the coach operations are connections to Anchorage, Park Connection, for example. I think they do an afternoon pickup at the Harbor Master Building, and then there is a little bit of staging that coaches have been doing just north of Boulder Field along 4th Avenue. You had like a half a dozen will.
Yeah, they'll be backed in there, kind of waiting, and
right.
When no one there get called up, they'll pull out of there, they'll go down, they'll pull into that area, get people on, or, and then kind of continue on that.
Sure, yeah, and for the railroads part, we have a 5-acre open area where we'll plan to accommodate the coaches that come down the night before for some staging. But yeah, it's a good question. We do have coach traffic, and so anyway.
Well, that's something, that brings me to kind of the scope of your design engineer. Frankly, I see this as a very difficult situation, making decisions. You're using, sounds like, as much input as you can, using a comprehensive plan as a guideline of community feelings, but there's an economic issue here, and I'll just start with that. These lease spaces, I think you mentioned that there might be $500,000 in revenue.
We just based, it's $100,000 a year on revenue if there would be.
$100,000?
Yeah.
Okay, so, for that amount of space, what would one normally assume would be the commercial value? How much merchandise would be sold out of that space? Tax revenue for the city would be important, but this is going to segue into another topic of mine, and that's development here, how it's going to impact current development of businesses here, how it's going to impact established businesses.
Yep, those are absolutely good conversations to have. So, and like I said, I'm not giving that to you, I'm giving that to you just so you understand like kind of the metrics that we have to look at it on. Like if we were to put like 10 lease spaces in there, it'd be $10,000 a piece, whatever, but it's not like we're just bringing forward kind of what a rough plan was from what was called in the harbor plan. And so we feel like there's lots of different like opportunities that could be worked out here to best meet the needs of the community. Yeah.
Can I clarify something
Yep.
on that question? So that lease space, the city, it's not the cost to build these lease spaces is not included in this project, right? So if somebody wanted to lease a space, they would then put their own structure
Yep.
there.
Yep.
But the idea is there would be a standard of what it needs to look like.
Yeah, we basically have a design standard, like, hey, you can do this, but it needs to look like this on the outside. Kind of like that picture showed that everything along that little bank had like the same look and feel to it.
Okay.
And we want that to, like, whatever that design standard is gonna be, it's gonna be the same as the harbor master's office. So we wanna make sure that this like looks like it fits, like is a quality kind of feel, and it's not kind of this like hodgepodge. I think hodgepodge can kind of work at times, but also too, when you look at something like that, that looks really nice.
So it's gonna be set up similar to like an HOA or something like that?
Yeah, totally, just say like, hey, here's the color of your paint needs to be, here's kind of like your roof pitches, here's, you know, kind of some general things and general colors to kind of give you like an idea of like what yours needs to look like to fit in here. So, and the cities like would pay for all those design standards and kind of what the way it needs to look. Because and in that lease area, just in your mind too, we figure like, we took like what the size of the derby booth, and there's like 10 of those right there. Like if you were like kind of that lease spot feel to it. So that's how we kind of were mapping that out in our head. But yeah, there's lots of different arrangements and like in spectrums of what could be done in that area. Everything from full lease to no lease and just have a restroom on it or whatever. Yeah.
So the design of the infrastructure modification that would be required to support that lease space, is that incorporated in R&M's contract for design?
Yeah.
And is it being included in the total estimated budget for the project?
Yeah, because there's a restroom on the end.
Yeah, as the relocation of the restaurant?
Yeah, and there's already one down there, so we already have like water and sewer and that run underneath there, and those are the really expensive costs. And so those are already in the ground right there, and so you would just have to dig that up and put some tie-ins. And so whether you want to move your restroom around on there, power's not really like a big thing. And then kind of the plan is so the harbor master's office is being planned right now. So this summer, they will start digging in the ground and put in the foundation this summer. And then they will start construction on the building in the fall. And then they'll work through the winter. And then hopefully that should be completed by the spring of 27. And then at that point in time, that was the plan of like when they don't want to be doing all this at once, so they want to focus on the harbor master's office. And then when that's done, they would move on to developing the parking lot. So the tentative plan is to do the parking lot piece at that point. But also too, that lease area right there, it's also flexible. Like you can build the whole parking lot, kind of keep that open if you want now, and then decide what to do with it, how to cut that up later, or it doesn't have to be. But the boardwalk can't be built until like all the parking lot is done anyway.
Well, okay, so you have really hit something there. The city, the council has approved a roughly $900,000 budget to R&M for design and project management. So.
Yeah, it's a little more than that, I think. Off the top of my head. But yeah, so.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money.
Yeah, the city has a bond for design engineering, the project, like everything like that is about $14 million, and that's just being paid. So basically, it's a revenue bond because what we're doing is we have harbor fees for everyone that goes out on like, any type of like six-pack or whatever. There's a $3.50 harbor fee, and those go to pay that bond. And so there's nothing that's just changing because our bond.
Well, I understand the total construction project is that large amount you talk, but R&M's portion is roughly in that $900,000 range, or million, whatever.
Yeah.
Is that flexible? I mean, first of all, for you to meet your schedule, these projects would have to come to bid pretty darn quick.
Yeah.
So these construction projects have moved into the 80-90% stage, like the harbor master's office. Is that at the 90-95% stage? No,
because it just got approved a couple weeks ago, so we just started now. And so what they're going to do is we'll be putting out an RFP at like between 35 and 65% to bring that on. And so
as what, a construction?
Yeah.
35%? That sounds like
between 35 and 65%. Yeah.
Can you clarify what that means? an RFP for 35 to 65%.
So what they're doing is when they get between the 35 and 65% like design engineering stage, they'll bring on, they'll put on an RFP for someone to construct it.
That part of the project? you mean?
Yeah, well, the whole project.
So when it's 35% design?
Design, yeah, between 35 and 65%.
That's when you start
Yeah.
construction.
And so what it is too, so that way the constructors can come on and they can make sure that they can have a look at, like, instead of being like 100% and then putting it out, but that way they can be kind of part of that final design process of like sourcing materials and doing all that kind of stuff. So that way it's actually a way to decrease costs. So, yeah.
And so this is already approved at this cost I'm seeing right here, and I'm sorry if I'm cutting you off.
No, please.
This is already approved by the city council at a cost of around almost $14 million, right?
Yeah.
And you're saying that the funding from this is coming from revenue bonds, meaning there's not going to be any increase in taxes or
No.
increase in fees
No.
to the users of the area?
No, it's because we had one, the harbor uses bonds to pay for all the upgrades, like dock upgrades and all that. So those are all paid for by those passenger fees. And so this is just a continuation of those fees because we have a bond that's expiring next month that would like completed one of the docks. And so we just continue the fees and continue to move projects around in the harbor. And so the fees stay the same. And so then I believe most of it is going to be, I think like 1 million of it's going to be paid for with like CPP funds, cruise ship head tax fund.
What percent?
Like, I think it's like $1 million of the 14 or something like that, so.
It'll be cruise ship dollars?
Will be like cruise ship head tax, so it's just another pool of funds that will be, people use this area.
And that's regardless of the final design, that's just the concept of improving the harbor.
Yeah, the concept of improving the harbor, yeah.
So I need to go back a little bit to understand R&M's contract. I don't know whether it was in the full council package or not, but the extent of their contract, it seems strange to me to have approved this a large contract, and now you're telling me, they're telling us that they're going to produce a 35% document that either design, build, the contractor is going to come and finish it off.
Well, with all due respect, I don't think that this board is not to get into that. So that you guys are going to be talking about parking and about the retail aspect of this, so.
Okay, well, what I've heard is that the numbers don't square up from what R&M presents as available parking. And what you just told us now is additional information, which I appreciate, but I still cannot see how you can have the same number of parking places that this picture, this is not exactly the same picture, this was dated June 20th, 2023, it's close to the same picture. And this space would have the same number, and we're excluding items 23, 42, and 36, whatever these are, as leaseholder spaces. I think that's what those are called. So we're excluding those, and we're only talking about available public parking. You're reducing the public parking, and I cannot see how that can possibly help existing businesses, and at the same time, adding competition. That's the long and short of it. You're reducing the available buyers by reducing the parking.
We're not reducing the parking, no.
Okay, well, I guess that's...
That's what I just discussed, when I discussed, like, if we add a few more spots to like the lower southwest corner and add some up there, we can actually exceed our current, by having organized parking, and we're getting rid of that camping area in the lower left down there.
You're talking about where the green thing is there?
Yeah, so that's going to become additional parking, so by using that as parking, we're actually, we can actually fairly easily exceed the parking up in there that we have in there now by converting that to parking that way.
Okay.
So that's not going to be a campground anymore?
No, and I would say that just the people that live there, that tends to be a little bit of a wilder campground. So the people that live there do not appreciate that campground in their backyard whatsoever.
I agree.
And also too, the city's just looking at this as like, it's not really disrupting revenue that much, just because we're having one use and another, and they're both going to produce like revenue. But also too, it's okay, like we want to make that area look better. if we need to do parking, we want to have more, where you get down towards the beach, we want to make that like a more park area and more walkable and more enjoyable by our like year-round residents. We want to have some I would say, like more like ADA type access over the rocks on both sides to be able to get people down to the beach. And so, because that's been one thing that we've heard a lot is that we want some of these areas to be kind of taken back a little bit and not just used primarily for, you know, campsites and all that kind of stuff. And so that's why if you look in that design,
Well, that's a beach there. Would that create an access to the beach?
Yeah, so if you look at this one right here, we can see down that lower corner, you can see kind of where we're looking at more just having like a walkway, having more greenway down there, having like I said, you could have another pavilion down there, but we want to make it so that it's more, it's not just taken over by campers and more people can use that type of area.
Is that going to extend across that footbridge?
Yeah.
So that area will no longer be camping either?
I would say that for right now, it's going to be camping, but they do also want to kind of improve that area as well, just to make it more parky. So.
And that boardwalk, that's going to kind of go like from the small boat harbor area, well, from where you launch the boats, I guess. That's that brown that's out there.
Yeah, so you can see
that's all a boardwalk.
Yeah, so that's boardwalk, and then you can see where basically, and we might have some of those drop downs that would kind of walk down, like I showed you, where you have seating that's actually like lower down into it, and then you can see the path will pick up there, and we'll have a walking path. You can go like around the memorial, come down the south side of the Uplands, and then connect to those paths down in there. And so that's kind of the plan is to create something like that.
Walk all the way around the perimeter.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, and have a really good walkway all the way around the perimeter.
So what would be the nature of this boardwalk? Did you mention that there'd be places to sit down, have a burger or something like that? Or?
Well, I mean, it depends if you put a burger joint there or not, I guess.
Well, I mean, you carry it in from something.
And no, but yeah, I mean, you could do that, and I think that's the intent. That's part of the discussion is like you could have that all just like a nice open area where people could like pull up their vehicles, have some barbecue pits there. I don't know. You know, kind of like we do in some other areas like the pavilion, but there's some certain recreational pieces that you could put there, or you could have lease sites there. That's kind of, I think, some of the discussion.
Could you suggest why one would have a boardwalk which requires maintenance, significant maintenance, versus just a gravel path?
I think it looks nicer. It's also, I think, people that with like ADA accessibility, it's a little bit nicer to have.
Well, you have a boardwalk across a lagoon.
And when I say like, I mean, you could do boardwalk there, but also too, I'm sure you could do like stamped concrete or make it, you know, do some other things in there. So if you wanted to, but that was kind of boardwalk on the other side as well.
Kind of make an extension of the bike path, maybe.
Yep.
Goes through there.
One of the things that I've heard from actually several people is the visual access to the harbor from that south side.
Yep.
And recognizing everyone that I've heard accepts the harbor building as both a necessary item. Nobody's talking about the design necessarily, that's somebody else's problem, but adding all these buildings in the lease space tends to diminish that. I guess this boardwalk is intended to try to bring that back, that visual access?
Yeah, and I think, well, if you look at that, kind of, like I said, the intent was going when we started with, you know, it's different from, it's not our harbor, but also too, if you look at the boardwalk, that's in front of like the Derby booth and those residents there, kind of just continuation. We want that same kind of look and feel of like a boardwalk that goes around the harbor. So that was kind of the, just a continuation.
It's deliberate then?
Yeah.
This might be kind of a silly question, but as far as what this board is this discussion with this board, what is it that the city is wanting?
I think council just wanted this, because the harbor plan is something that you guys oversee, or have input on it. And so I think just like getting maybe some public comment and on both the parking issues and then like the lease spots. And then maybe making some recommendations to council on like, hey, here's from the feedback we've gotten, here's, you know, like I said, if people with the kind of a couple of recommendations that I gave you guys here, we could exceed current parking that's on there right now. And so that would be like, hey, yeah, just do this and do this and this. I think you should also hear from the public as well. And then same thing with like the lease sites too, just like, hey, we had kind of a mix. We have some people that want something like this and some people that want something like this, and these are the two major groups. And so I think just making a couple of recommendations to council on the feedback.
I'd just like to ask one thing, then I could, Board Member Atwood. So ultimately, who will make the decision on the layout, aesthetics? Will that be administration, R&M, or council?
Council always.
So this will come back in at 70%, say, we don't want it to look like Massachusetts, we want it to look like.
Yeah, council will have definitely like a, yeah, I mean, yeah, of course, that is like Massachusetts, but that was
I'm
just.
guessing.
Right, yeah, East Coast. But yeah, council will definitely, because that was one of council's own concerns when we were just looking at, they're like, the building's not gonna be square like that. We're like, no, R&M is gonna bring those kind of preliminary designs before them, and they'll get to choose, so.
Board Member Atwood?
Yeah, are you aware of any business owners, operators that have expressed interest in establishing an operation in the, depicted lease area?
Yeah, I mean, I've just been contacted by a couple. I wouldn't say there's not a ton, but yeah, there's been a couple that have said, hey, if you do this.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's something to balance there then, because we've also heard from the public, some members of the public who've said they're concerned with walkability and view shed.
Yeah, no, and I think those are good concerns. I do think that, if you look at like the comprehensive plan and this type of thing, I just think, one thing I think is, if we look at a comprehensive plan and then those other, like the boardwalk sites on the other side, those things are like empty like 8 months a year.
Yeah.
And that's why in our discussions, like prioritizing if there's any incentive or any way we can get, like if we were gonna do lease spots, to be able to like have a coffee shop up there that's open year round, or have a little like diner or that's open year round or something that if it's gonna be up there, because we don't, just so.
How would you do that?
I don't know, you guys can come up with incentives.
Well, that's what it takes.
Right.
And that will be maintained as far as snow removal
Yep.
and whatnot
Yep.
year-round, right?
Yep.
And how many lease spaces are there in this plan?
Well, it just depends. That's why we wanted to put it out for RFP for businesses to tell us like how much lease space that they would need.
As far as square footage?
Yeah, as far as square footage, because with the other ones, you kind of have these little like pocket things, and so we didn't want to put everyone in a cookie cutter and just be able to say like, hey, I need this by this in this area, or I only need this in this area type of thing.
Right. Yeah, I could see that. You don't have to look at it in a total binary way where it's going to be all businesses and no open space, or it can be a combination.
Or else same sizing too, like just give people the options for sizing. So again, that was just the kind of the way that we theorized could be brought to council that way. So.
Board Member Draper?
I just wanted to kind of talk about the little beach area right there. I know that a lot of people have, it's been brought up that maybe there could be like a pavilion or something that is involved in this Uplands project, but that beach area is like the only real beach area in all of town. And that tends to be the spot where people gather for 4th of July fireworks, New Year's Eve fireworks, and it's a really, really nice little spot there.
Yeah, we agree. Yeah.
And so I think that attention should be put on that little zone right there for something that's for the, people that live here.
Yeah, no, and if you look right there, those are just a bunch of campers parked out in front, so we want to make sure that that's kind of blocked off, and so that more people, that becomes more of a public space versus like a camper space, and so, yeah.
That would be really cool to see that spot developed into something that's got a roof maybe and some, things like that, so.
Pavilion kind of thing.
Yeah.
Jason, I think you mentioned that extension in that area would add, right now it shows 24 parking places, and you feel that it could be added another 20 in that one, okay. And that's single car?
Yeah.
Okay. At this point, we're open for public comments if you have questions, Jason or the board, or anybody have a comment want to make? I think
move. So I'm going to leave up this one, so at least we have some.
Yeah.
Okay. If people want to talk about things that.
The favorable one, yeah. Let me ask you, Jason, was there any thought in this plan former member Bob Veldetta, former council member Bob Veldetta had brought up a submarine mariners memorial. In whatever they call that culvert that comes out behind Tuggis's Hotel. In that area, he thought there was some public land there that was available. It's sort of in this same geographic here. Has there been any thought about trying to research that or incorporate a submarine memorial in here?
The people that approached us that wanted the submarine memorial, they wanted, the only talk was they wanted to take over a lot of the like waterfront campground, and it was a massive amount of land that they wanted to take. That were like, the city cannot do that.
Not something simple like the Mariners Memorial?
No.
Okay.
No, it was a full-size submarine that they wanted to put.
Okay. Okay, yeah, please. Would you just state your name for the record?
Hi, my name's Elle Cernia. I have businesses in the harbor, and have had businesses in the harbor before the Uplands was here. I wanted to just, again, reiterate a couple of things. For one thing, the one thing that struck me just now was that there was a mention of giving new businesses an incentive to go into this area, which seems interesting to me because I've had different businesses throughout all this time, and I can personally say that all but one, it was not financially viable to stay open in the winter. It just is not a reality of where we're at. Restaurant, seafood market, coffee shop, we have a ton of them. And a lot of them close in the winter because they just don't make enough money to stay open. So to give an incentive to a new business to come in while you're not trying to give incentives to the already existing businesses is challenging, because all of us would love to be open and make money all year long. I mean, at least some of us would, but we've tried and it's just not economically viable. So I encourage everyone to think of that. I also encourage everyone to remember that I feel like it's being separated as I listen to it between the parking and the lease space, and the impact is together. You know, we can keep the parking, but even if we generate and add more spaces to that parking, if we add these lease spaces, that's also going to increase more parking. If you were to put a retail business in this area of lease space, it's going to require a lot less parking demand for its one employee maybe, and it's, you know, a couple of people that are shopping and stopping in, versus like something like a big restaurant. I mean, I know the challenges of my own parking, and, you know, I have 15 employees parking and 30 guests, and then all of a sudden 45 parking spots are being taken up by this new business that is not here right now, but it's going to start taking up the parking. So that, I think we need to balance that out when we talk about it as to what the draw of whatever these businesses that go into this area, if any, would be in taking up the parking that we already need for our existing users. Because my biggest thing is that we need to take care of our existing users, because like it was mentioned, those port fees that we've collected for decades now, we've paid them for our clients, and we've brought those people to town, and then to take that revenue and take away our services is very challenging when the parking lots are very full a lot of the time. And I just think it's important to think about that and the people that are already here. I do completely agree with the Harbor Master's Office. It's needed, and I am totally in support of that. I also completely agree with a woman that at council the other day was concerned about the accessibility to get to where she needed to go to get to her boat. You know, that kind of, when they mentioned the ADA capability and the emergency services, I mean, that is super important, I think, because it is a challenge right now if something were to happen out there. The other thing that I look at when I heard all of the conversation is that, granted, we want to turn this parking that's in that lower section, the 24 spots, which could in theory be 44 spots, or 54 spots, I guess. If we're taking away that RV parking, that camper parking, that's a choice that needs to be made, but then where are those campers going to want to go? They're going to probably go over to Boulder Field, and then Boulder Field won't have overflow parking available. So it's, what is that saying? Robbing Peter to pay Paul kind of thing? I don't know if I'm saying it right, but you know what I mean. So, I mean, between the year-round challenges, the type of businesses, like I mentioned, is going to be a huge factor as to what goes into that area. I'm not saying one way or the other. I'm just saying that it needs to be really thought about, like what those look like and the impact it has on that area. And other than that, of course, I would always love to have to know what is currently going to be, or what is the future plan of the current harbor master's office. I'm worried that it's just going to become a big storage room. I think it's very important to the people that use the harbor and all of its resources that they have access to showers and bathrooms. I also do think that the bus parking there is super challenging. There's buses that literally park in the boat launch. I've had days where, like, we'll be pulling our boats out to change oil, and we can't get into the lanes to wait to use the boat launch because there's buses in the way. So that's also, you know, something that should be in that plan of the future, you know, is from my standpoint of what I see happening. And as a person who drove their little fish taxi across the street for 20 years before she sold out, it's always been a challenge. Other than that, I mean, as someone that consistently uses the harbor on foot, on four-wheeler, in car, I'm always open to having conversations with anybody about what they think and how that goes. And yeah, that's it.
Thank you. I encourage you to put your notes to the council in a letter. Anybody else? Yeah, please.
Hello there. I'm Deborah Altermack, and I sat on this board for about 15 years, some years ago, and have recently thrown my name in to take at the last spot, so we'll see what happens. I understand it's only a 4-month position or so, so you won't have to put up with me for a long, long time. When I was on PACAB, we did a lot of projects and issues that were not just tourist related, but especially related with economic development in town. I see this project as certainly an economic development, and even maybe more so than tourism. And the reason for that is there's something that I have harped on for the last 30 years of owning Sailing Inc. in Seward. And that is, the boat owners are not tourists. The boat owners consider themselves residents because they pay a lot of money to the city and to the borough in their mortgage fees, in their taxes, in their utilities, just like people who live here. And some of those boat owners are probably here more than people that we consider Seward residents who are snowbirds and who are gone for 7 months out of this year and come back. You know, there's not a whole lot of difference, maybe a little bit monetarily, but those people come to Seward and they use our facilities, they buy groceries, you know, they use things here, they bring in money, and they are residents. But we have done a total disservice to our slip holders forever with parking. And it's because we don't have a space for them for parking. They can buy a pass in the summer for $50 or whatever, I think it's still 50. And then they can come down from wherever they're coming from, Anchorage, Soldotna, wherever, and try to find a place to spot, and it doesn't matter where they are. MNOP, up in the north end, it does not matter. Good luck to them to find a spot. Good luck to them to find a spot to offload all their goods, and then take it even further to leave their car for a week or so if they head out fishing or camping or whatever on their boat, there's very little provision for them. So while I think this is a great argument and a great discussion to have, I think it's bigger than that. I think it goes all the way around the harbor. To think about our boat owners as people who deserve something more than, hey, your $50 permit, good luck finding a spot wherever you go. So I have a whole list of things too, but maybe I don't need to get into them because hopefully next time you meet, I'll be sitting on the other side, maybe. And I do think the PACAB is a very viable commission. I wouldn't have spent 15 years on it, and I wouldn't be looking to get back on it if I didn't think so. And I hope you guys can be really, really active in this project, more than just parking and retail development. I think it's bigger than that. Thanks.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many, what's the number you're talking about of people who have private boats in the harbor? I know the harbor.
Well, I know how many slips we have. We all know how many slips we have. But there are some of those slips that are owned by, one person may own multiple slips because they have a business.
Well, I'm just trying to get a handle on how many cars we might be talking about needing places to park.
That's a good question.
My Ben comes down from Primrose, he needs a place to park, obviously.
Well, I can give you an example of numbers I know because I'm on the board of the I used to be on the board of the Kenai Fjords Yacht Club. And I would say, and Ben can help me on this one, both of these two, we probably have like 50 members who come down and actively use boats. The William H. Seward Yacht Club, the one with the building on the harbor, they have 100 members that come down and actively use. And so that's just those guys, and they're not all sailboats too. Some of them are actually power boats. I'm going to clarify that. So, there's 700 slips plus, and I've always thought it would be really wonderful to have designated parking for our slip holders, an area, not a spot for, but it's a designated area. And I think it's really important on this plan that maybe even instead of all that greenery between the Mirrors Memorial and the dock, that there is more space for loading at least. And I know when it comes into the competition between handicap parking and loading, handicap always wins. But loading is really important. And, you've got 100 and, how many slips?
I think it's 130 slips on those
Yeah.
docks.
So-
NMOP.
So if you have 130 people on a Friday afternoon, evening coming down, you wouldn't have that many, but, on those certain times where you've got a lot of people that are trying to get in and offload for the weekend, having them carry all the way from the other end is kind of tough. But,
Good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Okay.
I'm gonna keep it real short,
Okay.
just because I have to have this. My name is Sue Ward. I own a sailboat on N22. And if you look, that is the only access point for 130 slips. And the closest parking is pretty far away, and there's not very much of it. So I would like to amen what Deborah just said, that I really think, harbor is about boats. So I think walking trails are nice to have, and I think shops are nice to have, but boats come first. That's the purpose of a harbor. And I know my boat right now is being leased by a business, and they have charters that they take out, sometimes a week at a time. They flip into Day Harbor, they go into Ionic Bay up to Glaciers. And so you can have 2 or 3 cars per boat, not just one, if you're a charter business. And like I say, my boat is leased and goes out. I'm 72, and I still go down and try and sail. But I'm not gonna hike from the Boulder parking lot. I simply can't. So for me to keep the boat, I need to have some kind of parking reasonable parking. And I also applaud the idea of slip holders. Can we get designated parking? I pay $50 a year. If I use it 5 times a year, I've paid for it, because that's what it costs, $10 to park in the regular lots. But if I can't get down there and find a spot, I just go home. Anyway, I just wanted to amen Deborah and let you know that there's a bunch of us boat owners there on those docks who are really watching the parking.
Ben Smith, outside city limits. I have a very scattered little section of notes on this topic. I think that there's a lot of nuance to this plan, and I think one thing that I really haven't seen formally recognized is who are the user groups for this area, right? In this development, I just want to point out, adds at least, you could categorize, you have the harbor master and the people visiting that office, the employees, the traffic that's coming from that, the potential lease sites, and if we're going to do green space, and try to attract people, then you have, call them park users, I guess. That's all added to an area that's already, I think, pretty clearly recognized at maximum capacity for a few months out of the year. The one question that you can look at this, I know this is a preliminary drawing, we've really hashed that out, but just ask yourself, the 100 and something, I don't know exactly how many, but it's around 100 boats, multiple businesses, multiple charters, as Sue mentioned, a lot of, one boat really does bring in, especially with charters, you have the captain, maybe 2 vehicles with the passengers, and then everything that they load out. That's the MNOP float complex there. Where does that user group on that drawing exist? And other than maybe 20 spaces or something like that, you have most of it marked off for trailers, a lot of it blocked off. The lease area and the extra traffic from the harbor master's office, it just diminishes the power of that float. And I kind of like to think of that part of the harbor as it's like the new part. It's the part that's, the rest of it, as Deborah mentioned, is extremely difficult to get down to and find parking if you are a slip holder. So that, we have this kind of new modern section of the harbor that people really enjoy because they can access their boats. So that's the other thing, is I kind of want to call this, instead of parking, it's really access, right? I mentioned that at council too. How do you provide access to that area and account for the impact? The people that come down and spend their summers here, they're the ones that really do patronize the restaurants, the hardware store, the last one that we have, the boat yards, all the jobs associated with that. It's all revenue that's generated in that area. How is that captured in this plan? And I just don't think it is. So that's really, there's a lot more discussion I could have, bring in, but the other thing about this plan, and recognizing that, it's been slated for development for a long time, but how nasty it gets down there in the winter and in the summer with the winds. You can rip your door off. I've been blown down. So when you talk about having a year-round business there, it's kind of like, no, it's not going to work. Even if it was economically viable, you have lawsuits on your hand. You couldn't get out of your car certain days of the year. We've had, working down here by the waterfront, it's a struggle to get into the building sometimes, right? So it just doesn't seem like it's a very good area for that sort of development for a number of reasons. And the harbor master, of course, those guys are out there on the docks in all those conditions, so they're used to it. But I expect that building's going to get buffeted pretty good too. It's going to see some wear from that. It's kind of, I guess we're not. We have a little dialogue here or something. I guess this is not really a comment period, right? But those are my thoughts. I think a lot of the other user groups there, the yacht club members, haven't really, some of them are aware of this, but a lot of people that use that area haven't been brought into this conversation yet. They haven't been, they're out of town, they're out of state, they haven't seen this, so we're kind of springing that on them. They're going to see that get dug up this summer and wonder what's going on. That'll be their first welcome back to town. But that's about what I had. And I guess I'll just say this now instead of comments later. But I appreciate the recognition for my term on this board and the very nice plaque from the city. It was I started right before the pandemic and then continued to serve through that period, which was quite an exercise. I do feel like in those 6 years, a lot has been accomplished. It was a lot of work and a lot of. It was a lot of fun, and I do slightly miss it. And I do apologize for the somewhat abrupt non-renewal there. Some unforeseen events came up and took precedence. So I'm glad to see the board's looking like it's going to get full, and I'll continue to watch. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, we'll come back. Is there any question? Yeah, please. Comments or questions, I think?
Yeah, about this project.
Yeah.
I'll try to make it fast because I also have a citizen comment. The Amandus meeting, and I guess I was wondering, what's happening to the old Harbor Masters building? Is that being torn down?
It's still in discussion.
Oh, okay, so I was saying, I know.
It's not being torn down. Those restrooms are being, they will not be torn down.
Okay, okay.
Modernized somehow or another.
I would say that's more likely, because we actually need more restrooms there and better restrooms.
Yeah.
And better showers and all those things.
Yeah.
So, and in discussions where we're designing things, like, it made sense to keep that there and actually like expand that there, because that's actually like the most central part it can be for those restrooms, showers, and all that kind of stuff. And so, like, we do know that that is a necessity, and there's a need for expansion there, so.
Okay. Great, yeah, I guess we were talking to a couple tour operators who operate in those shops and watch the traffic, and they were just kind of wondering, like, if that building's being torn down, would be a good space for a tour bus, like, pull through and staging, but the showers are also obviously extremely important.
Yes,
so,
yeah.
That's my question. Thanks.
Is that it? Great. Okay. So we'll come back to the board. We'll come back to the regular session. And additional comments based on anything you've heard today? Well, I will say that I've learned some things, and I've seen Mr. Bicklin taking notes today, so I suspect there will be some things that come out of your comments. I particularly like the concept of user groups, and I know the city has mailing lists for all the people that have slips, but I would recommend that any group that has a mailing list outside of that contact their members. Yeah, sure.
Speak. You mind if I come up and speak?
Yeah, please, absolutely.
Well, I think, listening to people's comments and looking up there, I think as we look at this, that like it seems like there's a desire for those user groups, and I think that from those user groups to make sure there's parking in certain areas. And that area up right does have a loading and unloading zone, but you're right, there needs to be more parking in that area. And so one of the things that we could do is I could go back to R&M and say, hey, could you redraw a couple of things for me? Could you make it look like, what if we take maybe take the restrooms, move them over next to the Harbor Master's office and see what we could look like in designing that area so we have a lot more parking, which would actually go way above and beyond kind of parking now. The bathrooms would be a little more farther away, but then you could get more parking in that area. But we could kind of take a look into that area. But what I could do is I could ultimately just bring some different concepts back to you guys, just based on the feedback of like, hey, we could draw in those like extra parking spots down there. We could put in those ones up in that area, and at least I could bring, just from the feedback that was given by people that using that area, I could at least bring back some concepts it gives everyone a better idea. And if we were to look at developing that area, we could also put some public, maybe like a little public space in there, and not like that big, but we could add some public open area there, because we know that that's important, that people want to be able to walk around and hang out in the sun or whatever. We come up with some concepts that hopefully all user groups will can identify those needs on, and then bring them back to you guys. Would that be something that you guys would be?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I would start to, follow on that comment. I think that's a great idea, because when we're looking at this overlay, we're thinking about, what we think the parking, situation is currently. What's it gonna be like in 10 years, So, I mean.
And ultimately, we do not have enough land to provide parking for all the needs of the city. It's really unless we don't have this, make this massive giant parking lot. But I do think that, Ms. Altermat, I came up with, she pointed out something that I do think this commission could really start digging into, and that's parking in the whole harbor area in general. And I have heard it from a couple of people, but maybe an idea would be to talk about going up.
Multi-story.
A multi-story in one of the, in like the North Harbor lot, or this, anyway, that's another, because we're so land constricted, and I don't think any of us wants our community to become like a giant parking lot. So is there a way we could better use the land that we have and go up in certain areas if it makes sense? But I do think her idea, that's something that this commission really could tackle and problem solve in multiple areas of the, both the North Harbor, like the North Lawn Trail, and then North and South Harbor Uplands, look at addressing just parking. So, yeah.
How would you, Jason, you had the comments from today, and you can go back to R&M and they can possibly draft in some of these things. Some of them you'll probably accept, some of them you think are maybe not something you want to change. Like, I'll say, for instance, if anything, it should say potential future lease area, not for development, on the map.
And what I'll do is I'll actually, in one of the concepts, I'll just take out the lease area entirely.
There you go.
And turn that into parking. And so just because I think it's an important discussion point for it to be able to see okay, what would it look like without any lease area there, or maybe like I said, move the restrooms over, we can still have some public area there, but also just probably gain a number more parking spots that are closer to the kind of MNOP area.
Potential A, B, and C.
Yeah. I think just come up with some different ideas, and so what does it look like to look those ways? That way you guys can have a better discussion out of it, and the public can see it as well, what those would look like. Yeah.
One other thing while you're there, I know we're talking primarily about parking, and everybody is aboard with the Harbor Masters building. I've heard everything from we don't want flat roofs to it's $2,000 a building with atrium kind of openings and stuff. Is that still at the 35%? Are you still trying to work that design out?
Yeah, those are just 15% design, conceptual designs. Those are basically just using it like a space concept, saying here's all the elements that we need in that. And so we do, again, to be space efficient, and because it's actually a need, it's actually helpful to have 2 stories. They want to be able to look out and be able to see the entire harbor really well from where they're at. And so we do know that it is going to be 2 stories because it's a need, and also just makes really good use of space that way. And some of those concepts are just, they were just that.
Well, personally, I don't have a problem with making a gesture to anybody coming to town saying Seward thinks their harbor master deserves a decent building and looks good.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem with that. But it's only 5 office space. If I remember right, it's only 5 offices in that large building. Some storage and a lot of open space.
I think there's more offices than that.
I don't think so. But
anyway, but we're also too, we're building, for as many, Seward does not build buildings very often.
Right.
And so if you look at, this was built in the early, earthquake time, maybe this was around there?
When?
Around the earthquake?
No, after.
After the 66? Is it 66?
This building, 1966?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're talking still earthquake time. But, I mean, so what we're building is really like a 50-year building. So we're building for a long time from now.
Well, we have several buildings under construction, so, I mean, in plans.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's all going to be design issues.
And they're all built around the 1960s.
A jury will have to decide. Well, wow. I think this is a great discussion, thank you. I hope, I'm not sure we're ready to convey anything back to council yet.
I'll just bring something back to you guys, so you guys can see the different concepts, and then you
Yeah,
can go.
maybe even our next meeting, we are going to have a presentation, hopefully from a couple people about commercial fishing, et cetera, so, but maybe possibly the next meeting. Okay. Anybody else on the board? Okay, so we'll go ahead and move on in our agenda. We have no unfinished business, no resolutions. Discuss the lease area to make recommendations to council. I would suggest we table that for now, waiting for further input. And then we come to PACAB Priorities. So this is probably something we're going to have trouble completely resolving in 15 minutes, but at the last joint meeting with council, we had a pretty good discussion with them, and you have actually notes from that meeting, called work session notes, and from that council had indicated a couple things that were of concern to them that they think that we could focus our attention on. One of them that came up through a variety of them, or a couple of them that came up were fishing, both sport fishing and commercial fishing issues, the status of the whole industry. And quite frankly, when I started looking at this a little bit, I was really surprised, and I started looking at it as a result of Board Member Atwood's comments a couple meetings ago. This is very different than I remember when we got here in 1975. The industry does need to have to be looked at and see how it impacts our Seward economy. That's one thing that we could spend time on. Another question that came along was infrastructure, the amount of tourism and economic development, and along with the economic development, we talked about activity with the Kenai Peninsula Economic Development District, which I would hope would include the chamber, so that we could have a meeting, possibly even a work session, to talk about those things. Also, workforce development came from Councilmember Draper. And of course, the Uplands that we just talked about, and possibly some work on the rate study coming up and heat pump follow-up. Although it was clear that the council preferred to wait for any final decision on the heat pumps until after the rate study is done. But I don't think that means that you can't express your opinions as individuals to get them on the table for when the rate study comes up. And I'm sure the rate study, hopefully the rate study will involve, and I'll talk to the director of the utility about maybe coming to PACAB with, to gather information about the impacts of heat pumps. So based on these types of things, we need to set a schedule for at least the next couple months. We have a March, April, and May meeting, and then I think we go on a June hiatus. Is that correct? Okay. So does anybody have any of those topics that they would like to elevate in priority? We can have those on our agenda and even deal with more than one of them. So I'll just start with Board Member Draper. Did you get these? Did you have that to look at?
Yeah, I believe so.
Notes?
So you're asking if there's any priority to any of those?
Yeah, that you would recommend that PACAB look at. I mean, we've got things like hydropower also, and the fisheries and the heat pumps if you like.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously would be cool to follow up on that heat pump thing after the study's been done. Yeah, as far as priority on any of them, I don't have any priority at this point.
Okay. I don't mean to put you on the spot, Darren, you're brand new at this, but this is the kind of thing that if you don't have anything to do at night, you can look at these things. Sutter?
Yeah, so unfortunately, I was not here for this work session, and I deeply regret that I was out of state. But, you know, I'm kind of looking through this and reading some of the notes, and one of the things that really popped out to me was City Manager Capsort's suggestion that PACAB follow themes, and in the themes group, she has fisheries, tourism, and harbor uplands / Snake Harbor area. I don't know that I have anything that I would consider a priority. I mean, there's things that I find that we should continue to focus on, such as housing and utility costs and that kind of thing. So I'd definitely like to see more information about heat pumps or even alternative sources of energy. Fisheries is important, although I'm not an expert in that by any means, or utilities for that matter. So we just kind of would like us to just continue on with the housing issues and you know, just infrastructure and sewer, which is kind of one of the reasons I got on this board anyway, is to see if there's anything we can do to alleviate some of that stress on our citizens. I do have a question. When I first got on this board, we not only had our monthly meetings, but we also had work sessions. Are we still doing the work sessions?
We sure can. But we need to poll the board. For those of you who still work outside the home, my time is a little freer, but if anybody has time for that, and you're right, when former board member Aldermont was on the board, we had as many as the work session every month. And so there are things that we can do. I think we have kind of gotten slower in some of those activities, and now we need to ramp up. So I'd suggest that we be a little careful and not, you know, stick our foot to the floor, you know, kind of get going and build momentum. But I am more than available for a work session. I'll just ask the rest of you today, would you be available for a work session in early March?
I mean, I could be, I can just need advance notice to make sure my schedule works.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
I'll be gone in March for 10 days, so.
Early, late?
5th through the 15th, so.
Through the 15th? So you'll be here for the next meeting anyway?
That will be, yeah.
Okay.
So I see in these notes that we have Mark Lemons to present in March.
Yes.
Is that going to be about the commercial fishing that you referenced?
Yes. Yes. And I also hope to have, I don't have his name, the Copper River Seafoods. Anybody?
Oh gosh, what was his name?
Yeah, there you
I
go.
remember his face though, yeah.
Yeah.
Was it Jesse?
What?
Was his name Jesse?
Ed?
I have his card.
Ed Copper.
But those two is in March, but let Board Member Atwood, if you have some thoughts on what you'd like to talk about.
Just to answer the last question, it's Eddie Woolrum.
Eddie?
Yeah, so fisheries, tourism issues, great. Energy efficiency and programs, wonderful. Workforce development, yes. I don't know what role, we might take for that last topic, but more specifically though, just based on, meeting participation and comments, I'd like to work on this Upland, South Harbor Upland development and get something, actionable moved forward. So I think that would be the priority in the time that we have, with our remaining, meetings.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest that just because we gotta do something on paper, and I think it needs to be done at a meeting where we have a quorum. would this be through a motion to the clerk? We have to pass a motion to establish meeting schedules?
It's not required. We could come back with a resolution with a list of priorities.
Okay. So if I could take what I heard today, for instance, as chair, work on this and get it to the clerk, you could distribute it, and we could get it on the next meeting as a resolution. And at this meeting today, we could agree that what the next meeting would be about.
And the next meeting is March 18th.
Yes. Does that make sense? I've heard workforce development and commercial commerce, which are very, very together. Fisheries, of course, tourism, harbor uplands development, as and energy sources, which would include hydro, heat pumps, and we can get Director Taylor Crocker to come in and speak with us. Okay, so we've discussed this, and in our remaining time, I would mention that our next meeting on March 18th would include Mark Clemens and Eddie Vedder?
Copper River Eddie.
Copper River Eddie.
Eddie will run, if I'm pronouncing his name correct.
Sorry, Eddie, if you're listening, we'll get it right. Okay, so let's move on, and reminder of meetings, March 18th. We could conceivably have a work session at the end of March if we develop some topics. We've got a half a dozen topics and only 3 more months of meetings. So we could break some of these into work sessions. Okay. And citizen comments, please.
Amanda Sweeting, outside city limits. I have my chamber hat on once again. I would just like to answer a couple questions that you guys had asked. I had Malia, our visitor services, look into cruise ship day numbers. It says the number for 2025, we had a total of 72 cruise ship days, 88 total ships, including overnight stays. In 2026, we're scheduled to have 84 total ships, including overnight stays, but only 63 cruise ship days. I think it has to do, as Dwayne said, the fact that the completion isn't going to happen. We usually get cruise ships in late April, and we won't be this year.
And just to add on to your numbers there, so one thing that's happening is that Viking has, a model where their ships are staying for 3 days at a time. And
yeah,
they do their turn in the middle, so that's the additional ship days.
Yeah, she says, I'm seeing we have more ships coming in on the same day together with higher passenger amounts. So, yeah, there's a couple days where we're seeing like 4,000 people. It's crazy, amazing. And then to answer your question on the visitor side, why we might see that uptick, I don't have an exact answer, but there has been this trend in marketing about this idea that in this era of AI and over-information and sometimes false information, people are looking for more authentic sources of information, especially when traveling. So that might have to do with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please.
Yep, Deborah Altermat. Thank you. And I'm trying to remember back when I was on PACAB, we had the 2 meetings every month, and they were on the first Wednesday and then the third. And it seemed like our regular meeting was on the first and work session on the third, but could flip them and maybe do the work session on the first and regular on the third, just to get something on the books. But anyway, I hope I see you guys again. It's up to council. Thank you.
Other comment? Okay. Board member comments. We'll start with new member Draper, please. Any comments that you have, comments on the meeting or whatever?
I like the idea of putting most of our focus on this Uplands project and getting something down on paper about that. And I think that's the priority in my eyes. So anything else is kind of something that's a lesser priority. But that's about all I got.
Okay. Board Member Sutter?
Yeah, so first of all, I just want to thank Ben for your years of service on the board. We had a very short term together, but it was nice to get to know you a little bit. And Jason's not here, but I want to thank him for the presentation. It was very informative. I do appreciate all the comments that we heard today. I think it gives us a lot to think about. And I agree with that it would make sense to somehow be able to prioritize parking for those that actually pay to use the harbor area. It makes sense to me. I don't know if there's anything that we can actually do, but I also agree with Board Member Draper and Board Member Atwood that it would be nice to prioritize something that we can make actionable. And I think since we do have like a very specific thing that we are working on, which is the harbor uplands, if we can continue to try to focus on that until we can have something tangible or actionable that we can recommend to council, I think that would be great. And that is all I have.
Thank you. Vice Chair Atwood.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good conversation today, and I appreciate the administration's input, the Deputy City Manager. Good stuff. Thanks, Ben, for your service. It was great having you and having your voice. And thanks, Board Member Draper, for coming aboard. And thank you, Deb Alterman, for expressing interest in coming aboard. So it's all appreciated. And yeah, I guess I won't extend any more comment, but thanks to all the folks who are participating.
Okay, well, thank you all. I appreciate your attendance. Had a quorum, and our administrative assistant's effort to get us all here today. I encourage you to try to let her know ahead of time what your availability may be, so she doesn't have the angst. It was a little bit critical this morning if you saw it, but I really appreciate everybody coming so we can actually have a business meeting. Thank you, Darren, for stepping up. I know there's a lot to learn, although I'm sure you're aware of this. For most of your life, your parents have been very active in the community. But I know that we have both Board Member Groom and Board Member Draper now who have nurtured and grown here in this community, and I cannot be prouder of the fact to serve with them and hope for great things and guidance for our continued development. The priorities, I will get those to you, a list of those through the clerk, and we'll establish a schedule. Back in Board Member Almond's day, we were a little bit more organized. I don't exactly know why that is. I happen to be in the chair. I admit a little bit of disorganization on paper, but the thoughts are there, but we'll get it. I would remind everyone that, no, not remind, tell everybody that there is a spring rendezvous in Moose Pass this weekend. And along with that, I would thank former Board Member Smith for his service and bringing his style to our community in Moose Pass as well. And with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. All in favor? Okay, we're adjourned almost at 2 o'clock.